Daf Yud Amud Beis, the very first line right at the top of the Amud. Continue on with the discussion about a house that was bodek, was checked for chametz, and now you find some chametz in the house. Zok the Gemara hiniach bezavezu umatze bezaves acheres. If a person left chametz in one corner of the house, and then he finds it in another corner of the house. So now, do we say that this is the same chametz? Or do we say that no, this is different chametz, and now you have to do a whole new bedika? So it depends on, it's totally on the machlekes, plukta the Rabban Shimon Gamlev the Rabbanan. It's totally on the machlekes, the following machlekes. This Tanya we learned in the Bryce, Kardam Shaved Babais. If an axe was lost in a house. So there was an axe in a house, and now it's lost. Abayis Tomei. We say the house is Tomei, all the kalim in the house are Tomei. Shani Yomer Adam Tomei Nichzel Sham Unatola. Because they say a person who was Tomei went into the house and took it, and a person who was Tomei, he took that, he may have touched other things in the house as well, and he would be Matama the other things. According to the Kesef Mishnah, based on the Chuvas Rambam, we're Cheshesh, particularly in this case, because if we suspect that a person took the kardum, that means that he was a ganef, and therefore he's not zohir, he's not careful on any of the hilchos of tumah, and therefore we have to be concerned that all the kelim in the house are tamei. That's what the Chacham say. But Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says no, habayis is tar. He says you can assume the bayis is tar. Why is that? Shani Aimer Ishilo la'acher v'shakav. Because I would assume that not that somebody came in and took it, he left the axe in the house, but he forgot. He forgot that he lent it to somebody else, and that's why it's no longer in the house. And I don't suspect that somebody came into the house who was tamei and therefore touched the other items in the house and returned it. Or that he put it in one corner and found it in another corner. Who is talking about a corner? I mean, the Rabbana didn't talk about that it's in a different corner. They said it was lost. So the Gemara says, you have to insert this missing portion. If there was an axe that was lost in the house, habayis tamei. Why is it tamei? According to the Rabbanan, shani yomer adam tamei nechzas l'sham unatola. Because I say a person was tamei, came into the house, and he removed it, and he touched other things in the house as well. Or in another case, or in a case where he put the axe in one corner, and now he finds it's in a different corner, habayis tamei. Also, in this case, the house is tamei. Shani yomer adam tamei nechzas l'sham, because again, I assume that a person who's tamei came in, and he took it from one corner and he put it to the other corner, and then he touched other things in the house as well. However, Rabban Shimon Gamliel, he says, no, bayis tar. He says it's tar. Because I can assume that not that a person came in, that the owner lent it to somebody and he forgot about it. Or in the case where he found it in a different corner, I can assume that he forgot. He took it from one corner, put it in another corner, and he forgot about it. So therefore, in the case of chametz, we would say, according to Shimon Gamliel, if you put the left chametz in one corner, and now you see that it's in another corner, then similarly, we can assume that the owner himself took it from one corner to the other, and he forgot, and it's the very same chametz, and therefore you do not have to do another bedika. But according to the Rabbanan, they say you can't assume that the chametz that you found is the same chametz that the owner that forgot and took it from one corner to the other corner. You can't assume that he himself took it. So therefore, what do you must assume? You must assume that, for instance, a mouse took the chametz that was in the original corner. Now, you have to say that a mouse or somebody took that chametz. Well, if a mouse took that chametz, we have to be concerned that it's somewhere in the house. Now, Tosfos points out, he says, that now even though you found chametz in the other corner, the Rabbanan must be going according to Rav Shimon Gamliel that we learned previously, that day of Rav Shimon Gamliel, that says that if the kever was lost, and just because you found another kever, you can't assume it's the original kever. So therefore over here, there's chametz that was lost in the house. The mouse took the chametz from the corner that the owner put it in. And just because you found chametz in the other corner, you can't assume it's the same chametz. You have to be concerned that that's a different piece of chametz that the owner did not find when he did the bedika, and the chametz that the mouse took is somewhere else in the house, and now you have to do a whole new bedika. Another case, if a mouse came into a house and it had bread in its mouth, and then you came into the house and you see there's the crumbs on the floor, you have to recheck the house because the mouse doesn't usually crumble the food. So if you have these crumbs, you can't assume that it's from the chametz that the achbar brought in. You can't assume it's one and the same. You have to assume that the chametz that the achbar brought in is somewhere in the house. These crumbs were crumbs from before, and which were not found when you did the bedika, and the chametz that was brought into the house, the achbar put it somewhere in the house, and therefore you have to do a whole new bedika. Tosfos and Rabbeinu Dovid, and they speak out that the case is talking when you found crumbs. Well, obviously, if you only found a few crumbs, you have to do a whole new bedika, because if you just found a few crumbs, okay, you found some, but the chametz that the mouse took in is somewhere else in the house. So therefore, the case must be talking where the amount of crumbs that you found the total amount of the piece, the chaticha, that the achbar brought in. So the question is, you see all these crumbs. Now, if you combine it together, it's the same size as the piece of chametz which was brought in. Can you assume that it's one and the same, or do you say no, that these crumbs were there from before, and the piece of chametz that the achbar brought in is somewhere in the house, and you have to look for it? So only in that case would we have even a shaila. Otherwise, it's partial. If you found some crumbs, you found some, but there's still chametz in the house. So that's the case we have the shaila, and we resolve it by saying that no, ein darka shel achbar lefarer, and therefore these are different crumbs, and the chametz that the mouse brought in is somewhere in the house. You have to do a whole new bedika. Valmer says, what a case, but a case of a child comes in when he has bread in his hand, and then you come into the house afterwards and you find the crumbs. Ein sarach bedika, you do not need a bedika, because here we can assume, in this case we can assume that it's one and the same. Because it is the norm for the tinak to be mafara, to make the crumbs, to crumble it up. And therefore, you can assume it's one and the same. And Tosfos speaks out that, and this would even be according to Rav Shimon Gamliel, who said previously that if you found a kever, you can't assume it's one and the same, but over here the circumstances are such that you can. Because since the tina came in, and you checked afterwards, and you found the same amount of volume of the crumbs, and it's darker shel tinak lefar, here, even according to Shimon Gamliel, you can assume that it's one and the same. Boy Rava, he has a following shaila, achba nechnas ukikar b'fiv. What about if the mouse comes in and it has bread in its mouth? The achbar yaitze v'kikar b'fiv. And then a mouse goes out, and he also has, the mouse going out also has the kikar b'fiv. Now, what do we say in this case? Do we say it's the same mouse that came in and came out, and therefore there's no chametz in the house, and therefore you do not need a bedika? Or perhaps you can say no, that it's not the same. Perhaps we can't rely that it's one and the same, that it's the same mouse. Maybe it's a different one. Perhaps you cannot rely on it. And if you're going to say perhaps that we do say that it's the same, because it's very unlikely that a different mouse came in. One mouse came in with chometz, and another mouse came out of the house with chometz in its mouth. So maybe you'll say in that case you do not need another bedika. But what about the following case? If a white mouse came in with bread in its mouth, and then a black mouse left the house with a kikar mouth. Well, certainly this is a different mouse, because it's a different color, and therefore, do you assume it's a different chometz, and the chometz that the white mouse brought in is still in the house. Or perhaps you will say that no, that the black mouse knocked the chometz out of the mouth of the white one, and he took that same chometz and came out of the house, and therefore there's no chometz in the house. So Rashi speaks out that this is imtim salaymer. Imtim salaymer that you see in the previous case, that the white mouse went in and the same white mouse left, and we can assume it's the same chometz. Then the shaila is, if you assume in that case it's the same chometz, can you assume in this case it's the same chometz or not? Now, if in the previous case you don't assume it's the same chometz, certainly you won't in this case. But in the previous case, if you do assume it's the same one, what about in this case? Now the Gemara continues another shaila. If you're going to say that mice don't knock out, don't remove forcefully chometz from one to the other, so therefore this is a different piece of chometz, and the house needs a bedika. But what about the following case? If a mouse went into the house and it had chometz in its mouth, and then a weasel is leaving the house, is exiting the house, and it also has chometz in its mouth. Now, do you say but weasel certainly would knock out chometz from the mouth of a mouse, so perhaps it's the same one, and therefore you do not need a bedika. Or do we say that no, this is a different piece of bread, and the bread that the mouse brought in is still in the house? Because if you say that the weasel took it from the mouse, he wouldn't have taken just the bread, he would have taken the mouse, and you'd find the mouse in its mouth. The imtim salaymer, and if you're going to say if it was so that the weasel took it from the mouse, and if you want to say that it's the same chometz, it's one and the same, then if that would be the case, the mouse would have been in the mouth of the weasel. So therefore, we can't assume that it's the same. What about the following case? If the achbar went in and in the kikar in its mouth, the cholda yoitza, and the weasel is exiting the house, the kikar v'achbar b'fi cholda, and the kikar and the achbar is in the mouth of the cholda. What about this case? Perhaps now you could say that it's definitely one and the same. It's the same chometz, because both the achbar and the chometz is in the mouth of the cholda. Now, perhaps you'll say in this case, certainly it's the same chometz and you don't need another bedika. Or perhaps you'll say that no, if it was one and the same, then the kikar, the bread would be in the house of the mouse. The mouse came into the house and had the bread in its mouth. If the cholda came and grabbed the mouse and it's in its mouth, the chometz would have remained. It would have been, if it was the same chometz, it would have been in the mouth of the mouse, which was where it was originally. So maybe, perhaps, therefore, we cannot assume that it's the same chometz. Or perhaps no, we would say because the mouse was afraid of the cholda, and because of the fear, it dropped the chometz, and therefore the cholda then snatched the mouse and the chometz, and it really is one and the same. So therefore we would say mishum be'esusahu nafal uskalte, the loaf fell and the cholda took it and put it in its mouth. Teiku. These are teikus. If you have bread that's high up on the ceiling beam, do we require you to get a ladder and remove that chametz, or do we say no, it's not required? Do we say in such a case the Rabbanan would not be matriach the person to bother him to go to this extent to remove the chametz? Why? Because since it's not going to come on its own, it'll remain there, and it's not going to come down on its own, and a person therefore won't come to eat the chametz. So he won't come to eat the chametz, and therefore there is no problem of that he must shema yoveloichloi, and therefore he doesn't have to remove it. So Rashi explains, therefore, you can rely on the bittul in such a case. As far as Bal Yara and Bal Yamotze, you can rely on the bittul. Taisus also that says the Bedika is that you won't come Shem Yoveloichlo. Over here, there's no concern Shem Yoveloichlo because it's too far up. So perhaps you don't need in such a case, you don't have to take a ladder to remove it. No, perhaps we are concerned for the unlikely occurrence, but nevertheless, maybe we are concerned that it'll fall down and you might come to eat it. Perhaps you'll say that yes, he has to remove it because it might fall down and we are concerned. What about if the bread is in a pit? Do we require you to take a ladder, go down to the pit and bring it up and remove it or not? Now here, it's not going to come up on its own. So even if the previous case, you'll say, we're concerned maybe it'll fall down on its own, but here it's not going to come up on its own. So therefore, you're not concerned. So, or Dilma seems but perhaps no, we are concerned because maybe sometimes he'll forget. He'll go down into the board to do whatever he has to do over there, to put things in or whatever he has to do over there, and then without remembering or realizing, and there'll be chametz there, and therefore it is a problem, and therefore we would be matriach you to do this. Another shaylim, if you say in the previous case, yes, we are concerned and you have to remove the chametz, what about the following? If the bread is in the mouth of a snake, do we say you have to hire a snake charmer to remove the chametz? You can't remove it on your own, it's dangerous. Do you have to spend money to hire a snake charmer to remove it, or not? So, do we say begufa rabbanon? Do we say the chiv bedika, the rabbanon were matriach you and obligated you to spend your own time, exert your own effort, your personal effort to do it, but not to spend money? Or perhaps there's no chilik. But perhaps there's no chiluk, and you'd have to even spend your money. It's a teku. Tosfos says, even though we learned previously on Dav Daled that nichle linch Dovid mitzvah b'mayna, that when a person rents a house b'cheskes boduk, that we say that he is agreeable and willing to spend money to do the mitzvah of b'dikas chametz. But he says that's only over there where there's a chazaka that there's chametz over there. But over here, in such a case where the whole thing is questionable, maybe the snake will remove the chametz. Maybe the snake will eat the chametz. Where the whole thing is questionable over here, whether there's chametz, perhaps in this case over here, lo atrachu rabbanan, to spend money for the removal of the chametz. The Rosh says that even without this, the kasha is not a kasha, because over there we say nichel lenish lavid mitzvah b'mayna means only to the extent that we won't say that it's a mekach tos, that if he rented the house, it was a chesk boduk, and he rented the house and there was no bedikas chametz done, that we don't say it's a mekach tos. But to say that a person, to begin with, has to spend money to do the mitzvah bedikas chametz, maybe we wouldn't say that. Maybe If to say that it's a chesed, that it's a mekatos, and therefore he would back out of the rental and he wouldn't want to rent the house, maybe he wouldn't say that. But who says that in the first instance a person would have to spend money to do the mitzvah b'dikas chometz? The Gemara continues, Zok the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda says, Baitkin or Arba'asar, we search for the chometz on the night of the 14th of Nisan of Arba'asar Shachris, and in the morning of Erev Pesach of the 14th of Nisan of B'shas Abir, and at the time of the beer of the chometz during the 6th hour of Yudal Nisan. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says. Now we will see in the Gemara that the Havamin is that you have to do bedika all of these 3 times, but the Gemara Laskana will be different. But initially we're assuming that that's what Rabbi Yehuda meant, that you have to do bedika all of these 3 times. The Chachamim say no, loy badik or arba asar. If you didn't do the bedika on the night of the 14th, yivdak barabas, then you do it on the morning of the 14th. Loy badik barabas asar. If you didn't do the bedika on the 14th, then yivdak b'sayich hamoyed. Then you're bayek b'sayich hamoyed. The way Rashi learns b'sayich hamoyed is during the 6th hour. Loy barak b'sayich hamoyed. If you didn't do b'sayich hamoyed, yivdak la'achar hamoyed. You do the bedika up after the 6th hour, la'achar hamoyed, until nighttime. Then you do it until nighttime. Now the Mishnah continues, umash mishayar, what's left over, what you're leaving over, what you do not remove, and what you're leaving over to eat, or leaving over the chometz that you found for the next day. Yanechena betzina, you keep it in a secure place so that nobody gets to it, or a child, or an achbar, because if not, you'll have to do another bedika, because you have to be chayshish, so maybe someone took from the chometz and brought it into the house. So as we said, initially we're assuming this machlokes is, do you have to do bedika at all 3 times or only 1 time? But the Gemara is going to revise that understanding of it. The Gemara says, my time of the Rabbi Yehuda, what is the time of the Rabbi Yehuda? Which we initially think to mean that you need the bedika 3 times. So Rav Chisda v'Rabba v'Rav Huna Damar Tarvai, they say, Kenegesh Shalosh Hashbalsa Shabbat, where the Torah 3 times talks about the removal of chometz. It says, Lo Yirah Lecha Chometz V'Lo Yirah Chosor. And it says, Shivas Yomim Sor Lo Yimotzi V'Vatechem. And it says the 3rd time, Ach B'Yom Rishon Tashbisu Sor Mibatechem. So it says 3 times the removal of chometz, so therefore you have to do a bedika 3 times. Moshe Rav Yosef, no, that's not the pshat, because he quotes this baraisa that says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kol Shaloi Bodak B'Shloisha Prakim Halalu. If you did not search at these 3 times, Shuv Eina Bodak, you don't do bedika any further. So it seems to be the point is, do you continue to the bedika? Al mikan ve'elchu deplegi. We see the machlokes is not about the bedika that you do on the night, the day, and the morning, etc. It seems to be the machlokes is, the point of contention seems to be, if you did not do the bedika up until the Shas Yisr, do you continue? Do you do bedika afterwards? And Marzutra Masnahach, he has a brayso that says it more clearly. Masiv Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda Omer, Kol Shaloi Bodak Be'echad Mishleisha Prakim Alav. From one of these 3 times, Shuveina Baidik, you don't have to do bedika anymore. Al B'Shuveina Baidik Hu Depligi. So therefore you see the machlokes is not, do you have to do it 1 time or 3 times? The machlokes is, if you did not do it by the Shas HaYisr, do you do the bedika afterwards? So therefore now the Gemara is revising its understanding. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda Nami Im Loi Bodakom. Rabbi Yehuda says also, he says you do bedika, if you didn't do it at night, you do it in the morning, not the night plus the morning. If you didn't do it at night, you do it in the morning. So what's the pshat? Im Loi Bodakom, Mar Savar Mekami Suri and Basi Suri Loi. Rabbi Yehuda says that you only do the bedika up until the Shas Yisr, but not after. Why? Because if you're doing the bedika after Shas Yisr, we're afraid you might find chometz, and you might, without thinking, impulsively put the chometz in your mouth. So don't do the bedika after the Shas Yisr. Rabbanan Savre Lo Gasrin, and the Rabbanan say we are not geyser. So according to this, According to this pshat in the Gemara, now we're saying it's not that it's machlokes, do you have to do bedika once or 3 times. No, everyone agrees you only have to do the bedika once, and everyone agrees that the bedika is done at Leil Yudal, preferably. If you didn't do it Leil Yudal, you do it in the morning. The machlokes is, if you didn't do it up until the Shas HaYisr, do you do it after the Shas HaYisr? So therefore, we learn the pshat Mishnah as follows. Rabbi Yehuda says, you do it up until the 6th hour. Chacham say, if you didn't do B'dikat or Basar, you did in the morning. If you loibodik barabasa, yivdik b'seich hamoyed, you do it within the way Rashi is learning within the 6th hour. Loibodik b'seich hamoyed, yivdak la'achar hamoyed, even after the 6th hour, up until the night time. So, according to this, according to Rashi's pshat, is if you Chachamim are adding on that if you didn't do B'dika up until prior to the end of the 6th hour and the end of the 6th hour, then the Rabbanan say you still do B'dika after. Rabbi Yehuda says you don't do it anymore because of the Shas Yisr, and we're afraid you might find the chametz in it. The Rabbanan say you do the B'dika till the rest of the day. Even after the end of the Shkar to the rest of the day. That's what you do the B'dika. But the way Ran learns in Rashi, that is, it's only after the Shas Yisr, after the end of the 6th hour, but only till the end of the day. But during Pesach proper, you don't, because there's an Isser chorus over there. So over there, during Pesach itself, even the Rabbanan will be mighty, you don't do B'dika. That's the Shita of Rashi. Taisus asks on Rashi, it seems to be difficult because the way Rashi is learning in the Mishnah, it says that the Rabbanan say, Loi bodak barabosar yivdak b'soich hamoyed. It says you do the b'dika in the 6th hour. Why does he use a lashon moyed? Rabbi Yehuda, when he said it, in the Reish, Rabbi Yehuda said that Loi bodak, that he say he didn't do the b'dika in the morning. He says that you do the B'dika or Ba'asar Shachres Ubishas Habir. He refers to the 6th hour as a Shas Habir. Why would the Rabbanim refer to it as Moyed? Therefore, Taisus learns differently. He learns that what it means is that if you didn't do the B'dika, in the Loibodek, in Loibodek Bar Balsar, if you didn't do the B'dika on Yud Dalet of Nisan, you do the B'dika B'Seich HaMoyed. You do it in the Moyed, Loibodek B'Seich HaMoyed, Yivdak La'achar HaMoyed, which refers to the Moyed over means Pesach, that you do the B'dika, if you didn't do it during Pesach, you have to do the B'dika even after Pesach. And the Hezber is, it's Rashi L'Shitos and Taisus L'Shitos. Rashi says the B'dika is that you shouldn't come to be over Bal Yirah Bal Yamatzah. So La'achar HaMoyed cannot mean after Pesach. After Pesach, there's no Bal Yirah Bal Yamatzah. So therefore, Moyed cannot mean the normal understanding of Moyed. Therefore, he must understand that to mean the Shas HaYisr, and even though Rabbi Yehuda referred to a Shas HaBiur, B'daichi Rashi says that it must be referring to the same thing, and it must mean Shas HaYisr. If you didn't do the B'dika prior to the Shas HaYisr, you do B'dika after the Shas HaYisr, but not after Pesach. But that's Rashi L'Shitos that holds that the B'dika is, so you shouldn't be Yoyer Bal Yirah Bal Yamatzah. Taisus who says that the B'dika is that Shem Yavel Ha'Echla. Now, even after Pesach, there's a concern Shem Yavel Ha'Echla because it's Chomesh Shavel Pesach, and it's also even afterwards. Therefore, they say that you have to do the B'dika prior to Pesach. But if you didn't, you have to do it even after Shas Yisr, and if not, even after Pesach, because you have to remove the possibility or the chashash Shem Yava La'Oichla. So that's Taisus L'Shitosa, and that's why he says it means Moyed means the Moyed of Pesach, the entire Zman of Pesach.